Hey yo, ADR, this is King Black coming at y'all from the chateau again. I thought we'd do this video outside. It's a little bit more apropos for what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about my one experience with the Ouija board, right? And a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about this. But in my personal opinion, everybody has a certain level of connectivity with the spiritual side of things. Whether or not you believe in something other than this life, that's your personal belief. But at least for me, I know that there is good things out there and also evil things out there. And I've never messed with the Ouija board before, or Ouija board, however you want to pronounce it, right? Ouija, I don't know. But in any case, y'all know what I'm talking about. That board with the letters and the sun and the moon and the yes and no. Now, this experience is a little bit different because I didn't actually sit down and do a seance, but I want to tell you what happened when all I did was not even touch the board itself, but touch a box. Now, let me explain. Like I started off saying, I believe that everybody has a certain level of connectivity to the spiritual realm, and it depends on who you are, your interests, your past experiences, your family lineage, and your own personal spiritual beliefs that dictate how connected you are to this spiritual realm and also how it affects you or how attuned you are to it and how it can manifest and interact in your life. So even people who don't believe in the spiritual stuff has had things happen to them that they can't explain, right? So being raised as a kid in church, I was always smart enough not to sit down for a seance with one of these things, right? I've always been told that, a Ouija board is a window, a door to the other side, and you can't control what's going to come through. And a lot of the times, what comes through is negative, and it's not easy to close that window once you've opened it. So I've never sat down and done it. I had a couple of times that it was offered, and I said, nah. I wasn't even around when people were playing with it. So there came a time where I grew apart from the church, where although I believe in a higher power, I believe in God, I stopped going to church. And back in my teenage years, I used to deal with a lot of dark things. I used to read up on a lot of dark things. I used to try and manifest dark things in my life. Basically, I wanted to use, the darkness to my advantage. And this happened to me a few years ago. So, me and my wife were walking through the mall, and we were going through, an old classic for us that grew up during the whole emo phase, right? Hot Topic, right? The Hot Topic store. And we were just in there, I go through all the stores, Foot Locker, Champs, whatever, for Action USA. And one of the last stops that we did was just Hot Topic. We just went through, see what was there. Sometimes, I just wanted to see what was in there. And on our way out, there was a Ouija board on display. The boxes, just stacked up. And on the outside of the box, it says, "Don't forget to say goodbye," right? Or make sure to say you say goodbye or something like that on the box. And I glanced at it and I pointed it out to her. I said, "Look, it's one of those Ouija boards." And just playing around, I touched the box and I said goodbye as we left the store. Literally less than a second after I touched that damn box, the whole half of the mall that we were at lost power. So half the mall had gone dark, lost all the power. You can look down the main walkway and see that the other half of the mall still had light. So you can't say it was just, a common outage or something like that affected the whole mall. So that's the first thing that happened. And we kind of played it off. We said that's weird. I had just touched it, kind of mockingly said goodbye. And we headed out to the car. And we were traveling. We were about an hour away from the house. So we were traveling back, getting back to our city. And as soon as we get to the city, about maybe 2 miles away from the house, my car starts overheating. And I see smoke come out from under the hood. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I pull over. I'm like, oh crap. Because at the time, I had an older 90s Toyota. So easier to work on, right? Not so much computer stuff like there are in these cars nowadays. Popped the hood. One of the hoses had a big hole, like 2 to 3 inches wide. Going to the radiator. So just coolant was everywhere. I don't even know how that happened. All right, so this is an hour after I touched the box, an hour to an hour and a half. All right, that's the second thing. Now here's another crazy thing. So I get on the phone, trying to contact my family member, trying to call my dad. He doesn't pick up, and I'm like, what the heck? So I'm trying him like 2 or 3 times. I'm kind of getting pissed off, right? Saying, why isn't he picking up? He normally always picks up, blah, 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 blah. And then I get a text from him saying, I'll call you back in 1 second. So I'm like, all right, what the heck is he doing, So he calls me, and then I tell him what's going on. He said, yeah, I'm on my way to the hospital right now because they're taking your grandmother to the hospital. She just had a stroke. And then I just looked over at her, at my wife, and we just couldn't believe what was going on. This isn't a series of unfortunate events like Lemony Snicket. This is bam, 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 right? Back to back to back stuff that's going on. So thankfully, my grandmother, she's okay, or she was in the hospital overnight. But it was pretty scary, man, because the stroke she had, she couldn't really move, she couldn't feel nothing, she couldn't talk, she couldn't open her eyes. And thankfully, miraculously, she was able to open her eyes a few hours later, and they kept her for observation. She was able to move. Man, that was scary. But, so, all of this happened in the span of about 3 hours after I touched the damn thing. So before, like I said, I was always raised in church. So I know the good side and the bad side. And it's always been said that the devil always hates you. And why is that said? Why does the devil and demons hate you to the very core? Is because we as humans were granted redemption, whereas angels, the fallen ones, were not. So they despise that we get a second chance because, Jesus died on the cross for our sins. So they have nothing but millennia to fester in their hate. And when you're a child of God, right, the devil wants you the most. Because if he can turn you over, to his side or destroy you. He wanted to glorify his name and to put it in the face of God, like, look what I did. I took this person that used to be in the church and I made him into this person. So there's always been a struggle between both sides, I feel like, and I feel like that happens in everybody's life. You're faced with decisions, right? The angel devil on the shoulder kind of moments. Or sometimes you think about walking away from something and temptation just comes in out of nowhere. You didn't call it, but you get a phone call, you get an email from somebody presenting a certain situation that you're like, damn, I was just thinking about this. So, what did I learn from that day? Now, on top of that, a few hours later, my wife was looking through the camera because on the way home, she was just taking random ass pictures. And in one of the pictures, there was two faces in the reflection in the window. And I feel like when I touched that box, even though all I did was touch the box, that was enough because my intention was to mock it, to play it off, right? Like it was just a toy. It's not a toy. But I saw two faces in there, and I feel like the two faces that I saw were obviously evil, but they were what was behind everything that transpired that day. Like, I've heard of bad coincidences, I've heard of it was just bad luck, but this was more than that. How do you get the mall losing power, half of it only, not the whole thing, half of the stores losing power, the half that we were at, to my radiator hose blowing, to at the same moment my grandmother having a stroke and them taking her by ambulance to the hospital, and then seeing that picture. So, although I've never had physically touched a board or played with it, and although I should be wise enough to know not to mess with it, I still, you know, inadvertently let something out. Now, thankfully, after that day, everything calmed down and I didn't bring nothing home, right? Because that's another thing that people talk about when they mess around with these things. They start having weird stuff happen all over the place for like months on end or years, and they eventually got to either move out or call somebody in to cleanse the area, right? So I got lucky there, because no matter what, I've always been taught, and those of you that read the Bible, should already know that nothing is greater than God. So as long as you keep that part in your mind, the negative spiritual part can't really harm you. They can do other things, like I said, all that circumstances. Nothing happened to me physically that day, but look at all the other circumstantial things that happened around me. It caused chaos. It caused darkness. It caused fear. So, just with that little experience, I just want to tell y'all, if any of y'all, are spiritualists, mess with that stuff, you just gotta be careful, because you are your own person. You are already gonna do what you're gonna do. Nobody's gonna really stop you if you want to do something. But all I'm saying is, once something happens to you, you can't control it. You know what I'm saying? You can't hide from it. How are you gonna hide from something from the spiritual realm? You can't run away from it. When you go to sleep at night, that's all you. You know what I'm saying? Those sleep paralysis incidents, only you go through that. There have been times where I've gone through sleep paralysis things and I had somebody sleeping next to me and they didn't even move or budge, bro. And I couldn't talk, couldn't move. So when you go through it on your own. So I wanted to share that because it's something real, something that happened to me, something that, I feel like, if nothing else, like I know people play around with the satanic Bible and shit like that, like, or mess around with voodoo dolls and all that. Like, nothing might happen, right? But when it comes to the Ouija board, that is definitely a portal to something else. Doesn't matter if Mattel makes it, doesn't matter if Hasbro makes it, doesn't matter if you make a homemade one. You're calling it, you're accepting it, you're opening that door. You are telling the negative, I want you to come see me. And then when it comes see you and you're afraid, you're not going to necessarily know how to close that door. The only way to close that door is through God and through Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? This isn't a religious channel. Like, I'm not preaching to y'all. I'm just having this one side of me, this one story, before I go on and talk about other stuff, maybe more darker stuff that I was into back in the day. But anyways, wanted to make this outside. Sorry if there's any wind noise, but I felt like it was appropriate to talk about this stuff outside. So like I said, when you talk about things, you attract it. So I ain't trying to attract nothing inside my house. So, ADR, this is King Black coming at y'all from the chateau. Y'all take care. For those of y'all that dislike me, hate me, whatever, I pray for you. You ain't gotta watch my videos. Go ahead and do you. Live your life. All I'm saying is, people can't say when they watch my videos that I tell them go out there and take out an op, go out there and do X, Y, Z, because that's just destroying your life. I've always maintained you could be a member of an organization and not have to live up to the stereotype. And for me and my organization, the Almighty Latin King and Queen Nation, I'm a living example of that. A decade and a half later, I'm not behind bars, bro. I'm not facing 20 years. It's because I live righteous. I try to live wisely. I try to think about my decisions, because everything you do has big picture consequences. People have long-term memories, and it's bad because I have a long-term memory. I'll dwell on shit for years, for decades, that people think I forgot about, but I didn't. So the same goes for your enemies, the same goes for your friends. People have long memories, so you gotta be careful what you say when you do around them. It's kind of like being around cops. What you say or do can be held against you later. And you don't want something that you do now being brought out to light 5 or 10 years later when you are completely somewhere different. ADR, y'all have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Take care. ADR.